So, hey everyone. Usually, with the Explore Before Reading, I have you kind of go into the assignment blind because it's a warm up exercise for us, something to get you thinking about what we're going to be doing this week or for the next couple of weeks. This time, though, I need to introduce a few ideas to you before you move into the first Explore Before Reading. And those are the concepts of the worldview and the definition of humanities, which is why we're all here in an Introduction to Humanities class. So let's start with the worldview. The worldview actually stems from 19th century German philosophy. Now, you'll hear things when we look at Plato in ancient Greece and some of the stuff in ancient Rome that sounds a little bit like the worldview, and yeah, it is. But Plato didn't call it the worldview. Georg Hegel was the one who coined the term worldview. And this is an important definition, one you may want to stop the recording and write down. And the worldview is this: it is your view of your own culture and the cultures and thoughts of others, and it stems from your own experience. So think about that for a minute. It's what you think of who you are and how you were raised and all of that, as well as what you think of other cultures and people and thoughts that you encounter in this world. But it all comes back to your own experience. So think for a minute, maybe stop the video here, write that definition down, and then make a list of where you think your worldview has come from. So, where does the worldview come from? It comes from school. It comes from your friends. It comes from whatever religion you practice. Or if you don't practice a religion at all, you can gain your worldview from that experience as well. It comes from work. If you work, it comes from your parents. It comes from basically anything and everything that you encounter in this life. If you've traveled out of the country, if you speak another language other than English, if you do all kinds of things, they influence your worldview. Now, the interesting thing about Hegel's definition, and we don't quite get this far in this class, but I'll tell it to you anyway, is the idea that once you have that first experience, you can never go back to knowing nothing. And so every experience that you have is then jaded or tainted or influenced by that first set of experiences that you had. So maybe you were born in Ohio, and one of the first things that you remember is when you were 3 and you moved to Florida. Well, that sense of moving, knowing some people from Ohio, having family, maybe you go back there and spend time with them, and then coming to Florida has changed your worldview. If you went to a religious school, if you were homeschooled, if you went to public school, all of those things influence your worldview. So think about that as we move through the class, is that you are getting a glimpse into the worldviews of different people in different times. And that leads me to our second definition for this video, which is the idea of the humanities. Stop the video, write this definition down, and then start the video again. Because the humanities is defined as the study of the values of a culture in a given time based on what they create. So the key words, and this definition is on the test, and you will give this definition to me on the first quiz, okay? The key words here are values, time, and create. So you're studying what people created in a given time period, and you're gleaning from that, you're pulling from that the values of those people. So, where do these values present themselves? What are these creations that we talk about? We talk about paintings, we talk about film, we talk about music, literature, fashion, philosophy, theater. You could even go so far as to think about the way people raise their children, or there's been a big movement since the 1990s of the stay-at-home dad. That was a thing for a while. So where do the values that led to that come from? Now, one of the things when you read the book that will be maybe a little confusing is this idea of what about science? And I want to address this because sometimes when I ask you to give me examples of places you find the humanities in the quiz, that's also part of the question, people will put science. Science in and of itself is not a measure of the humanities. Okay, it's not like a painting, it's not like a film, a chemistry experiment or something like that is not the same thing. However, what the activity in the sciences tells us about people in a given time is important. And I'll give you the example of Einstein's theory of relativity. Okay. So in 1905, Einstein came out with his theory of relativity. I am not going to explain it to you here. We talk about it heavily in 20th century class. However, science, Einstein's theory of relativity, went on to influence paintings and film in the early part of the 20th century. So think about that. It's not the science itself. It's particular things in the sciences that influenced the arts. In this class, we will look at the work of Galileo. We'll talk a little bit about Copernicus and some of the ideas about the Earth going around the sun and elliptical orbits and things like that. We'll get there later in the semester. Now, how all of that presents itself in the organization of music, and it actually does, that's an example of the humanities. But science itself, just the word, is not an example. So hopefully that is clearer to you now. So what are you going to do next? Next, you're going to stop the video because I'm just about done. Then you're going to do the Explore Before Reading assignment that this video is located in. After that, you're going to open the textbook link. And there are 2 PDF documents in there, and they are 2 chapters from a book called The Humanities Through the Arts, which is written by Martin and Jacobus, because that is the reading for this week. This week's readings are not in the Fierro textbook that you bought for this class. So please do not email me and tell me that Fierro was talking nothing about what these questions are about when you look at the Chapter 1 assignments. Read the PDFs, complete the assignments, complete the discussion that says discussions there. There's actually only one, and do the quiz. And then you will be ready to move on when the class moves on. All of that is due on Monday at 9 a.m. Please email me if you have questions about this. But again, take a good hard look at that textbook link before you email me regarding the availability of the readings in the Fierro book, because they are not there.